It's the match reaction for Everton's heavy loss away at Arsenal. The game is just ticking away in the final moments, but Mark Murphy's got a new child now, so we need to get these things done quickly. Can't be waiting for Everton to lose 5 or 6-0. It's currently 4-0 with about 5 minutes to go, but I think barring any late more goals from Arsenal or a ridiculous comeback from Everton, the game is pretty much done. Kind of what we expected, mate, in terms of scoreline. Everton were all right for 40 minutes or 4, and then they make one mistake, a good player in Saka, and then I think it's fair to say that since that goal and the way in which Idrissa dallied on the ball for that second and what came after, the roof has very much caved in.
My daughter, being 9 weeks old, has very little understanding of the conscious world at the moment, but I think the fact that she slept through what are we now, 88 minutes, slept through 84 of those, for any new parent will know that is a task that is quite a mean feat at this tender age. Everton are good for some things seemingly in life, and if that is putting small children into a comatose state, and I think, I at the moment will take that, but it's always really difficult, I think, assessing an Everton away performance. You could probably stop that sentence there, but in particular at a team like Arsenal, who are so fluid, I think the first 6 or 7 minutes scared me slightly, because everything that you kind of anticipated an Everton potential positive result or performance being tonight, I think the first 10 minutes of the game absolutely wasn't that. And I think the kind of end-to-end frantic nature of it, I think certainly the commentary that we heard tonight suggested that Everton were, relatively had a promising start, and I think described tentatively as being on top in the early stages. I mean, I think only Evertonians knew that was not the way that this game needed to be. Sean Dyche kind of alluded to it in comments this week about how we needed to be, horrible wasn't the word he used, but I think he suggested that we need a kind of a gritty edge to our performance in order to churn some form of result out. And what a 0-0 tonight would have been seen as an enormous positive, and that's just
sounds ridiculous now, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's just a reflection of the state of the team at the moment. But slight sympathy with the kind of nature of the first couple of goals, and that they are fine margins. One of them is obviously very much brought on ourselves by Idrissa dallying on the ball, but you'd like to think that they are. That one in particular is a goal a few weeks down the line of Sean Dyche being here that simply doesn't happen.
Is that because he's jettisoned from the team for that?
Well,
I agree with the first goal. Mykolenko and Keane switch off. They've been defending a lot. It's not good from either of them.
I think Saka takes up a very good position as well.
And he finishes it well on his weak foot. We've been used to watching lads who can only can barely kick the ball with one foot all year. That is a good finish, but. Idrissa there, you said the word dallying on the ball. I think it goes beyond that, to be honest. It's a player who's just completely switched off and being lackadaisical, and we've seen this from him. It sort of gets forgotten because it was the 4th goal in the game, but think back to that Brighton game when he just gave up and played a blind pass into nobody, and they went away from scored on it. He gave away a mistake at the weekend. It's happening week after week, and this is obviously instant reaction. We don't know if there's like an injury or something there, but if there's no injury there, I'm absolutely not surprised whatsoever that Dyche dragged him at half time, because for someone who's all about standards and application and effort and fighting, that was just the total opposite. That was a lad who just thought, half time's ticking down here, I've got the ball, under no pressure, I'm just going to take as much time as I need over this and just casually try and pass it back to the goalkeeper. And ultimately he gets, Arsenal have outplayed Everton tonight, and that was always going to happen. They've got great players, they're on a great run. It was always going to be really difficult for us. But in that sense, that was just a team who's challenging for something, wanting it more than a team that's trying to fight for something. Martinelli and I don't know if Trossard won the ball. Like they really wanted it. They were after it. And we're supposed to be a team that's fighting and scrapping to try and fight for our lives. It's right on half time. It's 1-0. You're still kind of in the game there. you don't give up and dally in that situation. And I can imagine Dyche being royally pissed off by that. I don't think it's any surprise whatsoever that he's dragged him there at all.
Yeah, I mean, the most promising thing that probably happened tonight, on the assumption that there's no injury, is that we have seen a manager being, really coming out at that half-time break, and obviously we don't know what he said, but if he is to make this an example to the rest of the squad that those sorts of lapses won't be tolerated, then I think that they are the very thin straws that we can cling on to as being some form of learning curve of an evening that has been largely negative, of course. He in particular, he's probably the kind of personification for me of a team that doesn't quite realise the shit that it's in. The kind of step up in urgency, which is obviously quite fresh in our minds from last season, but there was a kind of tangible level of notable nervousness almost about players' performance at the back end of last season, and at that point you've just got to kind of make those nerves work for you. I still don't feel that. I look at 11 lads now who know that they are in an enormous relegation battle. And I think if you ask any fan on the street, they'd say that the kind of feelings we have towards the potential trapdoor are very much more amplified this year than they ever were at most points last season. He, as you say, we've praised midfielders far too quickly in years gone by for having this kind of Rolls Royce time on the ball, I'm so composed mentality. He does on occasion offer us that, and I still do watch Garner at times in this team and think I get your position in this squad, and I think I get the ideology of having someone like him behind the core and behind Onana, who obviously want to be a little bit more expansive. The idea of Garner we always think about is to, and any kind of six really is to break up play and then do the simple thing in a very understated and a very calm manner. I think he from a defensive point of view, I don't think the negatives of his game will ever be, and certainly when I think of where he potentially lets us down, it's not in failing to spot a through ball or failing to put a foot in. He from a combative point of view, he's still there for me. It's when he's on the ball. We obviously don't give him the chance to be in advanced positions at the moment, but I think prior to his move, we were starting to see that element of kind of, can you really trust this fella on the ball? Most of that, as I say, for me was often in front of goal, and whenever he kind of advanced himself up the pitch, it became pretty obvious quite quickly that he was quite limited. I don't mind him making mistakes in hindsight when he's that far up the pitch. And, if our number 6 can't go forward and be really involved in attack and play, then so be it. When he can't win the ball effectively and then play a simple ball to, whoever it would have been tonight, any one of the centre halves, back to Pickford, put it out for a corner, just anything but that, basically, yeah. And I think the worrying element is that these are, why do you go out and sign someone of his ilk? It's because you want that seniority and you want that kind of know-how in the middle of your midfield. All of the things that he should provide, he's kind of make a laughing stock of us in that one moment.
I mean, there's a penalty at the weekend as well. That's probably even more of a mistake in some. It's not as bad a bit of play, but it's a more crucial mistake in the sense of that was a very even game, and he makes a rash challenge.
Yes,
and that ultimately gets Villa involved. We're obviously 1-0 down. It's a much tougher one tonight, but you're right. There's players in there that. There's players in there that, I've said this so many times down the years on this show. I imagine we've got so many footballers, you look around and go, I've been at Club X, how have I ended up here? This is a lad who was playing with Kylian Mbappe and Lionel Messi last year and Neymar, and that was always the worry. And listen, I don't want to go in on him alone because it was awful all around tonight, but Now, how many players have we got that have been at that level now, that at the football club that look around and think, how on earth have I ended up here in this relegation battle?
It's a blend of those players and also the ones where Club X looks at those players and thinks, how on earth have you ended up here?
Yeah.
For all of the negative permutations of that. I think, I appreciate that we haven't got a lot of depth at the moment, and substitutions. We're never going to be, we're Everton and we're 18th in the league. We're not going to be bringing superstars on the bench and looking consistently fluid. But there's so many players at every single stage of that game tonight that you just thought, how do you play for Everton? And it's the contrast between that feeling and then the kind of broader. When you think about Everton and the predicament that they're in and potential relegation, you just think, why are we shocked? Like, there's so many of these footballers who are just quite simply not up to it. And, for years I've kind of rested on the fact that I'm pretty comfortable in most seasons, able to look around at other teams and the players that they have and think, I have issues with Everton, and I have niggles about certain players and how we play football. But there's a good 6 or 7 teams here who have major struggles, and most of them are worse than ours. We've progressively managed to accelerate our own decline way beyond any of those other teams around us, to the point where we've seen a team beaten by Grimsby Town at home in the FA Cup tonight, and if Everton were playing them tomorrow, I'd be convinced we get beat because we are unfortunately just that nature of Premier League team now. But it's trying. I'm trying really hard to kind of treat this game in isolation, because I feel as though when I watch Everton teams play these games, that's how they treat it. They are very much they're a roll of the dice. Let's just see if we can be dead mean and see what happens. But at least in the second half, Dice just looked at, Mason Holgate in central midfield is not the answer. But he at least, if nothing else tonight, made that point that, well, at least on the face of it, seems that mistakes like that will not be tolerated. That everything I say about the kind of primary objective tonight in terms of how we were ever going to get a result, and obviously being quite defensively resilient and possibly grinding out a 0-0 win, there has to be an edge about us going forward as well. And I know that earlier in the game we mentioned about sort of McNeil getting forward well, and Iwobi even got forward on that right hand side well, but there's no fooling us in terms of what capabilities this team has going forward. Absolutely no one in their right mind thought that Everton were capable of scoring any goal other than a set-piece goal tonight. And I think most of that, as you alluded to in the first half, Matt, was summed up by that. I'll use massive inverted comma fingers here for the counter-attack that we launched on the left-hand side.
Well, that was it, wasn't it? Because there were moments in that first half we thought, if we had 2 capable footballers who could run relatively quickly on the pitch, then we probably would have scored a goal. Because the one counter-attack that comes to mind, and again, inverted commas, counter and attack, is the one where Decore picked it up, and then it went to McNeil, and then I think Mopé has a back heel in the box in the end, doesn't he? It
was like an apologetic flick, I'll call it.
And you go back and watch that counter-attack, and every player in that move does the best to mess it up.
Yeah,
and we still managed to somehow have a shot on target at Ramsdale, albeit a very, very weak one. It's like Decore stumbles over the ball, as he has been doing so often in recent weeks. McNeil takes a terrible touch out wide. He plays a bad ball into Mopé. He doesn't turn quick enough and has to do an inverted shot. And we're still getting a shot at goal. It's like, put 2 players on the pitch, or who knows, 2 players that we might have signed in January who could have gone forward and actually done something, and you maybe get a goal there, and you've got something to cling on to then, and the game's very different. And listen, this is obviously Arsenal away, and we could have gone 1-0 up there and still conceded 4 or 5 or whatever tonight, because they are that good a side. But it just, well, the evidence is there, isn't it? We're having the same issue in every single game now. I mean, the goal scoring record is absolutely horrendous, isn't it? I think it's since the World Cup, we've scored 2 goals from open play, and one of them was a shot or cross from Seamus Coleman, whatever you think it is, and the other one was a 30-yard worldie from Damari Gray, who's seemingly not getting a sniff anymore. And it's like, it's almost like if a striker was running through a goal at the moment, you'd be saying, try and win a corner, lad. Like that's sort of where we are. You know, you'd be saying to Mope, try and knock it off Ramsdale to save it, and it'll go behind, because that's the only way we're going to score a goal. And when you can't do that, it just. And listen, Everton defended terribly tonight, but when you've got no centre forward, effectively, you've got no productivity out wide. It just heaps so much pressure on that midfield and that defence then as well. And that's when they are becoming more prone to crumble in the manner that we saw in the second half tonight.
If I had no centre forward and no productivity out wide, I can absolutely guarantee I'd have Damari Gray on the pitch. None of us really know.
And he's not great, is he? He's got 3 goals all season, but he's still our top scorer.
And I would be the first to say that he is, comfortably our most frustrating player at times, but he clearly is the only player in this entire squad who has any form of attacking edge about him. That you don't have to have long memories to think back to a game in that the blueprint was very much set in terms of going to the Etihad and, albeit going a goal behind and not being the greatest performance of all time. In those games where you do concede a goal, you need to maintain a bit of resoluteness about you, obviously, to not concede 3 or 4 like we have done tonight. And you need someone who's going to potentially just be capable of doing something to get you back into a game. I don't exaggerate when Everton go 1-0 down tonight. We simply do not have a footballer who is capable of getting us out of that situation, other than James Tarkowski coming up from a corner and nutting one in at the back post like we managed to muster against Arsenal. I get what Sean Dyche is about. I get what he demands from his players, and primarily most of that is going to be from a defensive nature at the moment, because we quite simply have to stop losing football matches. But I do look at Damari Gray consistently in every starting lineup or every 60 minutes. As good as someone we glance over to the bench and think, how is this lad not involved? And I am not describing the holy grail of a footballer here. We all know that there's a reason why he plays for Everton, and there's a reason why he cost £1 million. But he does simply have to be involved. And we've gone through the first few games of Sean Dyche playing this pretty consistent, let's call it a 4-5-1 basically. It would not surprise me now to see that evolve and change slightly, whether it be in terms of formation or personnel. I think the only positive of playing consistent kind of 3 or 4 day break games is that the theory is that he learns about this team very, very quickly. He does have to do exactly that, because time and games are obviously running out, but results and answers simply have to be found. And I don't think many of the answers to the questions that are going to be asked in the next few weeks were evident in certainly the early stages or the starting lineup of tonight's game.
Yeah, there's no solutions to this, is there? Like we're going in every game with 5 defenders on the bench, and we've got a midfielder on the bench there in Tom Davis tonight, and a centre back's coming on and playing in midfield before him. Like it's one of them, isn't it? Where I put on Twitter there that I think there's every possibility that Sean Dyche actually does quite a good job this season, and Everton still finish bottom, because that's the sort of squad he's been left with, and this was always the issue for me with January. And aside from the very obvious fact that we needed to sign a striker and we didn't get one, this is in Gordon going as well. There's nothing on the bench. There's and teams are bringing on 5 subs in a game now to try and change it, and we've got Damari Gray. And that's it. That's it. You can call Ellis Sims an option, but the lad's never scored a Premier League goal, and he's not looked close to scoring a Premier League goal. And that's the thing. It's like, if this style of football, which is quite predictable and quite basic, doesn't work, there's nothing you can really do to change it other than try and shore it up a little bit more, or go even more defensive with the options we've got.
Yeah, it's very hard not to go back to the transfer window now, but as key and important issue as it is, I'm trying in my mind, knowing that it can't be changed, to just draw a line under it and think, how do we possibly do anything with this squad? The frustration, obviously, is the fact that, and this is nothing against Sean Dyche or Frank Lampard or, in hindsight, any other manager that's come before them, we're now in that situation where we're watching a manager learn the mistakes and learn the drawbacks of certain individuals in this squad that all of us know. We'd be the first ones to stand up and say we as fans do not know more than any football coach or manager, but sadly we know when players are just not quite at the standard that managers wish that they were. We've mentioned so many of these individuals, and people don't need to be told the bad footballers at Everton, because it is quite frankly most of them. But yeah, in terms of how do we possibly make this work at the moment, frustratingly, you probably look at the midfield that we put out every single week and think that should work. That is quite honestly the best that we have to offer. Beyond Onana, Doucouré and Garner, there is, in my opinion, absolutely nothing, bar the prospect of bringing someone like James Garner in a couple of weeks' time, who obviously is getting better and better with every week that he doesn't play at the moment. I would put Ben Godfrey in that category before his 20-minute cameo of disaster tonight.
That was an all-time bad cameo, I think.
It was the only thing I will put in his favour is that for someone, and I'd throw Michael Keane very much into this situation as well, in that for someone who has not played a lot of football at the moment, and in a game where I would typically pick them to struggle, in particular with Michael Keane, that is not a situation that you want to be parachuted into. Someone like him who I think in the past has relied on building up confidence and consistency and not playing against really rapid, technically good footballers. Arsenal away is not the point where you want your first start in a long time. But these players have to, especially in periods of kind of not really knowing, and a new manager coming in and not really knowing when your next opportunity is going to be, and it might be sooner than you think. You do kind of have to exist in a state of readiness. I don't know what state these players have been existing in recent weeks, but nothing seemed ready about those two lads, and anyone who's been given any form of kind of cameo opportunity in recent weeks. There's certainly no one, frustratingly, and I think the reason why we're still searching for answers, I think now and again in this situation you can look at someone who comes on and shows 15 or 20 minutes, like Ellis Sims did in what was the recent game where he came on, in the Villa game. He comes on from Mope, he wins the ball out wide, puts the Doucouré in.
So that was Leeds.
It was Leeds late on, wasn't it? And you think, do you know what? Maybe going into the Villa game next week, we look at that as a potential option. My point being is that there's absolutely no one banging on the door here. We are, in terms of bringing any form of positivity back into this squad, we are simply looking at our watches, waiting for, we've mentioned James Garner, the obvious one being Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Villa probably was one of those games that I look at and think, I know we were ultimately comfortably beaten, but if we have got someone like him, we probably win that match. Clearly tonight is a totally different story, but it's hard. I think it's really hard to pick a squad up when they know that they are everything. I think when you have got kind of a little bit more quality and depth, there's at least a little bit of kind of looking over the shoulder and thinking, you know what, I've got someone on my back here waiting to take my place, or there's a reliance when the rest of the team look at someone going off and see someone coming on, they think, you know what, there's a different dimension to us now. If I was someone like Amadou Onana, for example, tonight, or any one of the other players who started and finished the game, every single time I've made a substitution, I'd just do a big internal shrug and think, well, how does that help? How does that really change the game? Other than someone like Demarai Gray coming on, who we know has obvious quality. You look at Godfrey coming on, you look at Davis coming on, McNeil in previous weeks, Holgate coming on in the centre of midfield, Ellis Sims potentially coming on up front. And you just think, well, how is that really going to help? And the manager has to try these things, and I'd be the first on his back to say, why have you legged the same 11 lads for 90 minutes? But we're a massive collection of bad footballers at the moment, and my only hope at the moment, as it is with most Evertonians, is that the more we look around at live results whilst Everton are playing, is that there are 3 other collections of bad footballers that are worse than us. And until Dominic Calvert-Lewin is fit, or until we've got Damari Gray firing on all cylinders up top, that is quite simply the state of apathy that most Evertonians are going to be in, because it doesn't look like we've got a result in us at the moment.
Not at all. Matt, we went there and won 2 years ago with Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison,
And
Ancelotti, James Rodriguez, Luca Dean. Just bizarre. Forest is just ridiculously big now on Sunday, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
that sort of feels like the game that if Everton go there and turn in a really meek performance and lose, then it's like it feels like, oh no, this is really really going to happen now.
It's properly in that sweet spot of doom for Everton as well. That game, the away games exist on an enormous kind of scale, really, of being. Most of them obviously work out quite negatively for Everton, but I look at an Everton side. I probably look at an Everton side going to Arsenal or City or even Chelsea that we've got in a few weeks' time and think I can kind of see how we work a result out of those games ahead of someone like a Forest away. This is very much in between a game like tonight and a game like Watford last season, for example.
Yeah.
Where you think, you know what, you're the better side, go out and win it. In my mind, before the game, I can naively see how those things work for Everton. That one on is it Saturday?
Sunday, isn't it?
Sunday, excuse me, yeah. Are we on telly as well?
I think so, yeah.
Right, okay, so there's step 1 in why we get beat. Step 2, promoted club, very positive at home, great crowd behind them, very good record, drew with Man City there recently. Will generally make life a nightmare for teams who aren't up for the fight. And unfortunately, we talk about this kind of fighting spirit and this dogs of war mentality that we're all ready to dig into when the chips are down, but we're frail and weak. If Everton go 1-0 down at any point against Nottingham Forest, I couldn't point to a player in that squad who rises above how difficult that moment would be and says, well, this is what we need to do, or, follow me, lads, I'll give you this example of how difficult moments in Premier League football have to be challenged. If Everton go down in games at the moment, they unfortunately lose them. And it's not simply a Dominic Calvert-Lewin issue anymore. It is a mentality issue. And I know that Sean Dyche has come in and said, certainly on the face of it, I think that he's trying to teach these people how to be people as opposed to footballers at the moment. He's trying to instill all of the kind of personnel and all of the characteristics as opposed to how to kick a football. We very much need both of those things. But all of the kind of the buzzwords that surround a relegation survival, he's trying to instill in these footballers, and I don't think we've seen anything really to suggest that he's made that breakthrough at the moment.
Not at all. We will leave it there. We will, of course, have build to that game against Forest this weekend. I think it's Sunday lunchtime, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll see. That is enormous. Is it Sunday lunchtime?
It's a 2:00 kickoff on Sunday ahead of Liverpool beating Man United at Anfield.
The Liverpool win tonight, by the way.
Liverpool did win tonight, up the Reds. So they beat Wolves 2-0. Thank Christ, yeah. So you'll appreciate as listeners that most of these podcasts are recorded in front of live results and fixtures of other Premier League games. But if I know Sundays, then Everton get beat by Forest and Liverpool beat United at home.
There we go. I'm sure you're looking forward to that. Cheers for tuning in and listening to this. Like I said, we're building up to that game this weekend. It's absolutely enormous, isn't it? Everton have got to go there and get something. Otherwise, looks like it's going to be bleak. But cheers to Mark Mosey. Cheers to you for listening. Up the toffees. We'll speak to you soon.